Hello everyone and welcome to the Winging It F1 podcast between the Turkish Grand Prix and the Bahrain Grand Prix. This episode I'm here with Freddie Coates and a very well-rested, well-slept Nigel Chu. Freddie, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm not well-rested at all though. I had to get up to record this podcast a couple of hours ago.
Yeah, and Nigel, you're looking very au naturel and fresh this fine morning, soon to the afternoon. How are you?
I'm really not fresh at all. I feel absolutely horrible.
So we'll dive straight into it. The third question. We're looking at news that's come out over F1 over the past week. A bit of a look back at the Turkish Grand Prix as well, and a bit ahead to Bahrain. First thing is, how comfy is Nigel's bed? And
he was asleep for a long time, Adam. I think it's going to be one of those.
You don't know when I went to sleep though.
Yeah, but we were waiting for you for a long time. We were checking on Facebook when you were last active.
We'll move actually into the F1, and we're going to start back at Turkey, and just kind of the thing that I guess a lot of fans noticed, and especially if it hadn't been such a spectacular race, I think probably would have had even more coverage, was in qualifying they sent the cars out at the start of Q2, I believe, while a tractor truck was still on track for clearing away the wreckage of Nicholas Latifi's crash on a slippery, wet circuit on a term where it's quite easy to spin off. Yeah, kind of what do you guys both think kind of when you first saw it, first of all?
It's put a stain on what has been a brilliant race weekend, unfortunately. It was a horrific decision to start Q2 with the knowledge that there was a crane on track recovering a car that had spun out at the end of Q1. So they had the 5-minute lull in between the sessions, and they just chose to start it with the knowledge that it would be a minute at most. 40 seconds was the figure given for the car to be cleared. So rather than waiting a minute to start Q2, they just sent the cars out with a crane on track, not VSC conditions or anything, just double wave yellows around turn 8. Turn 8 as well, the infamous turn 8, as we called it for the majority of the season when we've been talking about Turkey, the corner that has put fear into drivers for years on this new tarmac layout, new asphalt layout, which was spinning cars off all weekend. Latifi had proved in Q1 you can spin there and crash, and yeah, it was the complete ignorance of the race direction to just forget about Jules Bianchi in 2014. Forget that if there's a crane on track, that a car can spin off and hit it, even if it's safety car conditions, which is what happened to Jules. So it's a horrible thing to have happened, I think. It's just ignorance from Michael Masi and the race director. He was informed by the clerk of the course that the crane would be gone by the time the cars got round there, about 40 seconds or so. It wasn't. And there was a green flag immediately after saying, go hammer and tongs, why not? So it's just wrong, isn't it?
It makes it even worse that it was raining as well. Cars can go for any moment. The track was incredibly low grip. It was like an ice rink all the way around. So yeah, it's a pretty poor error. It's not the first time. It's not the first big mistake we've seen. Obviously, we saw Stroll at Imola a couple of races ago. Michael Massey's just got to be careful because ultimately he is the one making the decisions because he is the race director. Now, I do think in general he's done a good job, but I think there's been quite a few unnecessary mistakes this year, and he's just got to be a little bit careful with that, I think.
There's been a lot of situations that are developed which are just so strange. For instance, like Leclerc in Barcelona driving for 2 laps without seatbelts, no investigation, not even from. I mean, that's an FIA thing, but it's also a Masi thing. That's his job to refer that to the stewards. Then you've got the same with Kvyat at Turkey had loose seatbelts. I don't know when. I haven't looked into the details of that. I've just seen the broad story, and I think that's for the race. He had loose seatbelts. That wasn't investigated at all because nothing's happened. And there's more. The safety car lights in Mugello went out before, just on the final corner, to inform the drivers that the safety car was coming in. When we knew halfway around the lap from the graphics it was coming in, but the drivers, they're going to be focusing on the safety car lights. That's last port of call, particularly for Bottas at that point. So, and that caused a massive pile-up because the cars were in weird positions for a safety car, more weird for a safety car restart than usual. So there's just a few lapses which haven't, just as they're building up, haven't sat right with me. He did do a good job coming in 2019, particularly after the really unfortunate passing and shock death of Charlie Whiting at Australia in 2019. Michael Masi stepped up because he was there, and now has done a really good job, and in some situations has definitely made the right call. I'd say there's been a few situations where it's been touch and go, and I'd say, yeah, fair enough. You've done a decent job there. I think there's a few sessions where some people would probably have not stopped it where it's been fine, actually. I think but some people would have stopped it where I think it's been fine. I think Mazzi's been okay with doing that, with trusting the skill of the drivers. But there's trusting the skill of the drivers, and then there's just putting them in harm's way. And what this episode makes me think is, was the track safe for them to drive on in Q1? Did they start Q1 too early? If they were that pressed for time for the light, for instance, on Saturday, were they that pressed for time to just start Q1 then? They run out of all the delay time with the red flags because of the wet conditions. They just started because they felt they had to. And that's what worries me, is that every call now is going to be questioned because of all of these situations piling up.
What worries me is that there's been a lot of these incidents. I mean, Michael Masi always talks about, we'll learn from this and stuff. But eventually, you either learn it and you iron out all the mistakes, or you don't. And for me, I don't. There's too many now. I think he's not got on top of it. I don't think that's the problem. You're either good at the job or you're not quite good enough, and he's just going to be a little bit careful of that, I think, because if we keep seeing these mistakes, how far is he going to be allowed to go? Because one day there will be something that goes really wrong, and it will be that.
Yeah, I think when they kind of said afterwards, "Oh, with the benefit of hindsight, we shouldn't have done it," and it just felt like, why do you need the benefit of hindsight to know that, you had the benefit of hindsight in 2014 in Suzuka. You don't kind of need. You don't need kind of the cars to be literally going past the crane and everyone on TV seeing that and erupting about it to know that it's a bad call. And it's making too many assumptions with driver safety. It's assuming that the crane will be off. It's assuming that the drivers won't get round there when it's still on. It's assuming that nothing will go wrong either with the drivers or the crane or the marshals or the cars or whatever. And they just shouldn't be making these assumptions and genuinely putting drivers' lives at risk, because it's not too extreme or too hyperbolic to say that, it's the worst thing that can happen in F1 at all. And, a lot of accidents that happen, Hubert, they kind of looked at it and, I know they've changed a bit around Eau Rouge, but they've not really kind of had a wider change within the sport because it was a freak accident. It's the same with, Jules Bianchi, they did change things, but, there wasn't kind of too much blame apportioned to the FIA. And then they learned from it and they changed it, and F1 is now safer as a result. And now they're just regressing. And, if the worst had happened, then, he would have been under absolutely huge pressure, because it wouldn't have been a freak accident. It would have been a completely avoidable accident. It's
beggars belief.
It's just mind blowing to me that they did it, and to gain a minute from
of
whatever
was unnecessary. I mean, the conditions were changing all the time, that it wouldn't really make much difference to anything if you started a minute later. Everything on a racetrack is designed at full speed, is designed to be there. The Tech Pro barriers, the cars are designed to hit the Tech Pro barriers at speed. The gravel is there for a reason. The tarmac runoff is there for a reason. What isn't there for a reason is a monstrous crane picking up a car. They're not designed to crash into a JCB that's there to clear a bloody crashed car from the previous session. The crashed car from the previous session proves cars can crash. Even if you're the thickest person in the world, it proves that cars can go off at that corner. And a crane proves it's difficult to sort out as well. The crane is proving it's difficult to sort out. So, oh my goodness me. They're playing God. And it's stupid.
Yeah, I think it's just, and we'll come on to another incident that Freddie mentioned before, but yeah, I've not really got anything much more to add. Just how it's just infuriating, and almost as infuriating is the FIA's response of, well, we messed up there, but we'll know next time. And they shouldn't need to know next time. They should have known this time. But yeah, it's, as Freddie said, Daniel Kvyat at Portimao, the Portuguese Grand Prix last month, it was found that he had loose seatbelts afterwards, and the FIA have come out and kind of said, we're fine, don't need to investigate that. And this is after they didn't investigate Leclerc for driving 2 laps without a seatbelt, done up as Freddie also alluded to earlier. And it's kind of, I think it's been swept under the carpet a bit by kind of everything else that's happened this week, and there's still fallout from Hamilton's win and all of that. But yeah, kind of, to me anyway, even if they didn't think they needed an investigation, just in terms of the public image of the sport to the drivers and sponsors and fans and teams, having an investigation would have helped rebuild that, I think. Don't know.
And there'll be internal discussions, definitely. There'll be internal queries about people's jobs, because there should be, I think, from these episodes. The Kvyat scenario was that he said, I think my belts are undone, and the team told him to stay out with 10 laps to go in the race. And the key word he said there was again. So it's an
Why
issue.
did they not review?
They had an investigation with Kvyat stuff. They said it wasn't unsafe, and they said because it was his belts are slightly loose, not undone. So actually, Kvyat had said undone, which is the wrong terminology. But they had an investigation, and they concluded that the team changed the way they acted accordingly for the final few laps of the race. But the way they acted wasn't to bring, I think it might have been to bring Kvyat in, because if I remember rightly, Kvyat was on the back, because we criticised Kvyat for not finishing in a way that Gasly did. Gasly, finished 5th in Portimao? Yeah. We criticised Kvyat for finishing dead last of the runners. But presumably he would have had to have picked, to be fair to AlphaTauri, they might have brought him in and sorted his belts out. That's my assumption from that, from my memory. But I think it still seems something that should be really, really hammered in.
Yeah.
Because you should be making examples of teams whose seatbelts aren't working. And I don't think it's a bad thing for the FIA to come out and criticise people for putting people in an unsafe position. That's the FIA's role. That's the FIA action for road safety.
Yeah.
So Michael Schumacher, when he turned in on Jacques Villeneuve, was disqualified from the year, and that's the harshest punishment we've ever seen for that kind of thing. People have done that kind of stuff and nothing happened to them. So it feels like they should be going, I think, to
the old days.
Well, yeah, I think they should be being a bit harsher with these kind of things. I think they probably like Roman Grosjean was not black flag, was banned for a race in 2012 from his Spa shunt that was deemed to be his fault. And I think maybe there should be the threat of that brought back.
Yeah, I think this all stems from when they started having those 5-second time penalties. So we just see 5-second time penalties for everything now. When in the past you always got a drive-through or even a stop and go.
But you not think if they go to drive-throughs and stop and goes purely, do you think that would then just lead to drivers getting away with more rather than?
I don't know. I don't want to
5
compare
seconds
series, but
other
series don't have 5 and 10 seconds. It's only F1 which has these 5 and 10 seconds. Other series are super harsh. If you make contact with someone and it's your fault, you get a drive-through, no matter how much of a big mistake or small mistake it is. And personally, I think it should be that way.
I would agree with Freddie. Actually, I think it would lead to more things going unpunished, or kind of an incident like in Canada last year. If Vettel gets a drive-through for that, then the FIA are getting stoned, I think. Afterwards,
they got stoned for a 5 seconds.
Yeah, so they're kind of going to be in a position
Probably
where
were stoned.
Yeah, I think the YouTube video for that has more dislikes by about 10,000 than it dislikes for the highlights of that race.
Not surprised.
So yeah, I think they're going to be in a position where they're either going to have to cut on-track action or let people get away with things. I think the 5-second penalties do a good job, but I think in this situation where it kind of it's entirely internal within the team, it's that whoever's responsible for making sure the seatbelts are okay hasn't done their job properly, or they've come loose in the race and AlphaTauri have gone, it's all right. So I don't think there should be that decision available to make. And if teams, it needs to be so it's not worth it for teams to keep their driver out if it's in a potentially unsafe position, because at the moment that's what it is. And we said the same with COVID as well, that it's kind of not worth teams because the punishments are quite lax over COVID breaches of regulation. It is worth it for teams to kind of risk it and bring their drivers to events if they're in a potentially dangerous position. And it's the same with this, that if you know that the FIA aren't really going to punish you for it, then you're fine. If you knew that you'd miss the next race if your driver doesn't come in and get his seatbelt sorted out, that's going to force teams' hands. And in Azerbaijan 2018 or 2017, there was when Lewis's kind of headrest
17,
was loose.
He was forced to come in.
Yeah, he was forced to come in, and he ended up, I think, losing the race kind of based off the time he lost from there. But it didn't matter because nothing worse happens. And I think teams have to have that approach, and the FIA and F1 need to have that approach.
Yeah, I think you're very right with that, Adam. That there should be more balls from the FIA to instigate safety. And I think, going back to what Nigel said about harsher penalties, there should be also more balls to instigate harsher penalties. Because, it is a mess how many 5 seconds there are. I think a 5-second penalty is a good idea, but I think they shouldn't be scared. They shouldn't be scared of a 10-second penalty. They shouldn't be scared of a drive-through penalty or a stop-go penalty. These are now reserved for the harshest of misdemeanors and crimes. The last time I remember there being I want to say 10-second, 15-second stop go is the worst they can do. 20-second stop go maybe was when Vettel bashed into Hamilton at the
10-second stop.
10-second stop go. All right, at Baku in 2017, and I think they should probably be a bit more inclined to issue those kind of penalties. They're just a really massively inconsistent in penalties, and we say this probably every other podcast, that the stewards just are so strange with their decision making, and they're voluntary stewards. It's not a set of stewards who go around to every race. We have that question raised a lot, and I don't know what's the best situation. Really, it's really difficult, and you can't look at really other series because they have issues as well. Formula E has issues with the stewarding. There was the race, the Saudi Arabia race, first Saudi Arabia race of season 6. They released the safety car, and there was just this crane with a car in the middle of the track, and it's even plainer to see in Formula E because the street circuits are narrow as hell. So that at least in Turkey, you had the track, and then the crane was off the track. This crane was on the track with cars going at full speed. It was unbelievable. And so it seems like an FIA wide problem, not just a Formula One stewarding problem. And I don't know whether there's just needs to be a lot more done in their stewarding training process. And Scott Elkin and Michael Masi, Scott Elkin being the race director, Michael Masi's position for Formula E, both were proteges of Charlie Whiting, and both were 10 races with him as deputy race directors. And that's why they're in these positions now as Masi with Formula One, Elkin with Formula E, respectively, for both of them. And they've had the protege training with Charlie Whiting. They just need to get I don't know, just get better at it.
Yeah, I think it's obviously, it's difficult within the heat of the moment, and we're not saying it is an incredibly demanding job, but they're in that position because it is such an important job. And yeah, I think there needs to be more thought about the actual if the worst happens, what that would mean when they're making decisions, because I just don't think there really is. I think this might happen, someone might spin off and hit it. It's not there doesn't seem to be enough weight put on the fact that this could be a fatal incident, or this could completely change someone's life for the worst.
Like the government, isn't it? We all get it's a tough job, it's really difficult, but ultimately
You're doing the job.
Yeah, you can do badly at tough jobs. It's not a get out of jail free card. Sticking with Turkey, one of the best features of the weekend, as it turned out, was the low gripness of it. And I don't know, I think on Friday I was kind of worried it might turn into a bit of a farce, but actually it didn't. It turned out into a brilliant race. So the question for both of you is, should we have more low grip surfaces in F1? Would it improve it, or do you think it's a nice thing to have a one-off of, but if it's if people know it's coming down the track, would it not have the same effect?
I think it's good as a one-off. The whole concept. I mean, it was cool because it was weird and different. Yeah, we like unpredictability in as a fan of Formula One, but I think if it just becomes the norm, then it will just be normal, and that means it's not fun. Then you're watching a practice session, just like, oh look, a car's spun. Oh well, watching the racing is just like, well, we'll expect this result because it's different and it's weird, and then you get it and it defeats the point. It's like when a couple of times you go to Singapore and you'd expect Mercedes to do badly, and they would, because it was Singapore, do not as well. And it's just like, okay, cool, well, we expected that now, and it ruins the fun. So the unpredictability is good. The difficulty is good. We like that, but it can come in different ways. The unpredictability can come from lots of cars being able to fight for a win. And the difficulty can come from never being allowed to make a mistake, because you're always going to have cars around you, which is why the midfield is cool. Because you can't make a mistake, because if you're Perez and you get pitted, then you go from 3rd to 6th or 7th in Imola. Whereas if you're Hamilton and you do it, you're fine, you win the race. So I think, it stems to me, the issues of F1 being not that tracks are slippy sometimes, because you're going to get a slippy track every now and again, and it's fun when it's a complete shock, when you expect it to be such a really polished track that the cars are going to be going as fast as they've ever been around Turkey, which is what we were thinking, what everyone was thinking, and then it comes, it's completely different. That's cool, that's interesting, it's a curveball. But any other time, I think, probably wouldn't be as interesting.
It's exactly like the Canadian Grand Prix 2010 when the Bridgestone tyres went off, and then next year Pirelli come into sport and decide, every race should be like Canada 2010, and then. But to be fair, 2011 is one of my favourite seasons. Yes, the championship was over very early, but
Good season.
Races, there was a run of races, 6-7 races in a row. They were just absolute classics.
We had that in 2019 as well. In 2019.
Yeah, 2019. Yeah, last year.
The championship was decided by race 4, but from like Austria up until Monza, yeah. They were really good races. Singapore as well.
2011 2019 are parallels for me. But yeah, so if you're looking at that, I wouldn't mind seeing more low grip races. Not every race, but I just love seeing the drivers having to work at the wheel. We're seeing them make all the inputs and stuff like a rally car. It's something I really missed from F1. But that said, even in those conditions, it was very difficult to follow, and that says a lot because it's a big old wide track. There's straights, there's slippery conditions, cars at different speeds, yet there's still a difficulty following and overtaking, especially for the first half of the race when there was no DRS. So essentially, F1 just has to make the front and rear wings a bit smaller, and then you'll get that every race, and you won't have to put a new bit of tarmac down around every single circuit. So make the wings smaller if you want to see the drivers working harder at the wheel. Is my opinion.
Yeah, I think I'd agree that because it was so good because it was kind of unexpected. Whereas if kind of that's not the case, teams will find a way to adapt it. Every F1 team is extremely good at adapting, but at the flip side, maybe just keep it a secret. Maybe just tarmac a few corners, re-tarmac a few corners like 2 weeks before. Don't tell anyone. And then the teams turn up and they're like, oh, wow, what a surprise.
Well, this comes back to what Nigel says every week, which I'm entirely on board with, which is doing completely different formats. So maybe you can just say, okay, we're going to do this qualifying format today. Bam, do it. You've got to do a race, or you've got to do Q1, 2, 3 as usual. That kind of thing. You can mix it up and make it more lucky dip. And yeah, lucky dip sounds crap, but if you make it entirely different and make it that you could be getting an entirely different show by making it a different show, because that's what Formula One needs to do, is that you can't just rely. We're getting to a point now where you can't rely on it to make the show happen itself. Yeah, we had to brilliantly, and that was complete chance that happened, but a little bit of a prod in the right direction.
Especially if we're going to have 24, 25 races as well. To make each event different, you've got to have little tweaks, whether compulsory 2 pit stops at Monaco, or
you've got to use all 3 tyre compounds, that kind of thing.
Or one lap shootout at Silverstone. Little things like that.
I mean, I still
drive
quite
backwards
like the
at
idea.
Monza.
I still quite like the idea of just having mystery races. So like all the paddocks just like after one race, especially if it's a double header, and then they all just have to I don't know, just get blindfolded, like put on a plane, and then they just land and they don't know where they are, and then they take the hoods off and it's like, oh, we're at Bahrain, and they're like, oh whoa, and then they've just got to go racing, or even
they land at an airport, they get given a map and it's like X marks the spot, and they've got to do find riddles and stuff to get to the race, and it's like some kind of Crystal Maze kind of meets Hunted or something, and whoever gets there first qualifies first, and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and it's you get Racing Point, get there last and start at the back, and Alpha Tauri, you get there first because they're the best at riddles for some reason, and Daniel Kvyat starting on the front row at the Mongolian Grand Prix.
Yeah, or not. Yeah, Bahrain's probably a bad example. There's this track in Argentina that's round a lake, and it's the most beautiful track I've ever seen.
Street track, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Road.
It's beautiful. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, But, you know, or they just turn up some like random track that no one even knows exists, and then they're like, right, Friday, go, and they've all just like got to go out and learn it.
Put them in the outback and send them to Bathurst.
Oh, don't even talk about Bathurst. It will get me. No.
It'd be like in Gallipoli when they're just like walk through the desert for like 3 days with just like their shirt over their head, like yes.
Let's make every F1 race the Paris-Dakar Rally. On the way.
Honda would have a slight advantage.
Yeah, although now it doesn't go to Dakar or Paris, I believe.
It's in Saudi Arabia, this one.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and one more thing in our extended Turkish Grand Prix review, mid-race, whatever we want to call it,
Fallout.
Is Pirelli. Yeah, Fallout. Is Pirelli. And in the doc that we have for planning this podcast, then Freddie's just written in big capitals, damn you, Pirelli. So,
Nigel wrote that last week.
Well, it gets even better. So, Nigel, I'll let you take the first.
Oh, no. This was Freddie's idea. I'm going to let Freddie take the reins here.
Oh, fine. I'll take the reins here. Pirelli tyres are bonkers, aren't they? They're so weird. We look at them and think, what the hell's going on here? And we don't know. No one knows. Why do at some tracks they boil and turn into like melted rubber? Why do in other ones do they just sit there and exist for years? We don't understand. No one understands. The teams don't understand. We just want good racing, and we want pit stops to give us good racing because strategy does give us good racing. Pirelli want that, but don't at the same time. We don't know. We've got a really weird situation going on here. Yes, this year we haven't had the interesting different tyre compounds that you'd get every year because Pirelli have just decided to do a blanket, you get this many tyres for every race because of the coronavirus, which is fair enough. But they're still weird tyres. Like the intermediates not famously don't work for anyone, most of the time. Only Racing Point figured them out. You can just look at the realistically, a wet tyre should give a similar pecking order to that of a dry tyre because it should work like a tyre that's supposed to work for the conditions. But yet, Lewis Hamilton was 5 seconds off Lance Stroll in qualifying. So what's going on here, Pirelli? Sort it out.
I mean, me and Freddie spoke about this off camera a little bit. The operating window is so narrow. It's ridiculously narrow. It has been for probably since 2018, I want to say, 2018, 2017. I don't know why. Maybe the wider cars, bigger tyres, whatever. But it just makes it such a lottery in a bad way. Because the only reason it's bad is because it's always Mercedes.
Lottery that Mercedes always win.
Yeah, yes, yeah. But it's just so weird that. See, I remember last year, British Grand Prix, Hamilton setting the fastest lap on all like 30-lap hard tyres. It just, to me, that shouldn't be possible in F1. I don't know. It's just, it's really strange. And then you get a race like at Silverstone 2 this year, where the tyres don't really last at all. Max Verstappen comes through. I don't know. It's just so strange.
To answer this a few years ago, they just made them softer and softer and softer. And you had super soft, why not? Oh, ultra soft, why not? Oh, hyper soft, yeah, that's fun. Let's have a pink one. And that seemed to be the impetus. Like, let's have more fun colours. And we didn't really get it. And you'd be like, wow, the cars are so much faster. And it's like, yeah, well, the tyre is so much stickier and it goes off after half a lap of Monaco. And that's just like, what?
I do quite like every race. I like that they'd be able to make every country's flag out of the tyres. So, like, there'd be a billboard and it'd, like, for France, it'd have, like, wet, and then it'd have, like, kind of paint exploding out of it and stuff. And then it'd have, like, wet, hard, super soft and stuff. And I quite like that.
But that shouldn't be how you pick a tyre supplier.
No, it shouldn't make up for the.
If we have Michelin, we'd have
especially at France,
and that would be great. I'd love to have the Michelin man running around. You see him at Formula E races running around. Like, look at me, I'm the Michelin man. They even had him in Berlin where they had coronavirus lockdown. Didn't even allow like majority of journalists. They only allowed the like the proper Formula E official feed broadcaster, but they still allowed the Michelin Man in because he's amazing. So why didn't we get the Michelin Man?
Question for you
Well,
both.
they allow-
we need... Oh, go on.
They allowed Pudsey Bear into the Turkish Grand Prix, and Joe Sayward wasn't very happy with that. But sorry, it
Let's
wasn't
get the
really
Michelin Man to bully Joe Sayward.
Nigel, what were you going to say?
Hey, do we need the free tyre compound rule? Because I think at some races, it makes a one-stop much easier. Like, imagine if we had the
Soft
two
to hard.
softest compounds of the three to choose at races. I feel it would make things a lot harder to do at one-stop and stuff. I feel like the free...
Good pun.
What, did I make a pun?
Hard tyres. Hey.
Oh. I didn't even see. Yeah. Do we need it?
Well, it makes it super easy to do a one. No, not very good. Hyper easy.
Adam, you're going soft.
Hey.
There
we go.
That wasn't a good one either.
No, it wasn't. It was quite bad, actually.
They've all been a bit medium. Hey.
It's super hard to make tyre puns, isn't it?
Yeah.
I nearly made a wet joke then. Thank God for that.
Well, if you're laughing at them, I guess you're a bit wet. At least we don't have Hancock to talk about. That would be very strange. Anyway,
maybe his sense of humour is just intermediate.
Anyway, before we get onto tyre rims, I'd say that yeah, what you're saying there, Nigel, is interesting to have, like, because that brings it back to what you're talking about 2011 earlier, with like lots of soft degrading tyres. And I mean, just because everyone every day would say, oh, we don't like tyres, and we would enjoy the races, but Mark Webber would come out and be like, I don't like the tyres, and that would be it. So that would be the predominant. It was like when Honda was with McLaren. Every single day there'd be a new article about why McLaren hated Honda. It was the same with the tyres, and it's just like, it's a bit boring. I think we're just finding tyres boring. And it's just, I'm having a little ramble here because I don't know what to say about it. I can't think of an easy fix. I think, yeah, getting soft tyres is fun, but then it's just going to be like, well, then they'll just be silly degrading. And getting hard tyres is boring because they're not silly degrading. I don't really know what we want.
I wonder if we went back to 2011 now, with what the teams and the drivers have all learned, would the one stop still be normal? Because the drivers would, like Hamilton, they would just adapt to make a one stop work. Now he knows how to do it, kind of thing. Because that's, one of his best skills, making the tyres go on forever. If we go back to 2011, would Hamilton now be able to do that? I wonder. And is it the teams have just learned how to do it? Perhaps?
Well, if you look at the team which dominated in 2011, it was Red Bull, and part of that was because they really did actually understand the tyres a bit better. Yes, they had a fantastic car, and Sebastian Vettel behind that was unstoppable, but they really understood the tyres. People always talk about Sebastian Vettel going to visit the Pirelli factories and speaking to the engineers, and he's the driver who's really done that around that time. So I think what they would learn if you go back to a similar situation is I think more teams would invest time into trying to figure out the tyres before the season rather than just putting them on and trying to figure it out in the practice session. I think Red Bull did that to a huge effect in 2011.
Make it tyre time.
Tyre time.
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I mean, I think Hamilton would have figured it out at some point, and now he's winning races just based off his tyre, the way he can handle the tyres a lot better than Bottas.
Yeah. Well, what I'm essentially saying is, because back then they used to do 3 and 4 stop races. If we had a 2011 race now, would the drivers and teams be able to do it on a one stop because because of what they've learned, or would it still be a 3-4 stop race as well?
It might be 2, I think. Well, I think. I mean, actually, I'd probably say for a lot of drivers it would still be a 3 or 4 one. Take Lance Stroll or something like that. I don't think he's any better than kind of your average tyre wearer in 2011. But I think kind of the top end, your Hamilton, your Perez is would be able to kind of make it work on probably a two-stop.
Leclerc is very good on the tyres.
They'd be able to do it. So, yeah, I think it might mix it up a bit more, or it might just kind of make it into a really tyre-dictated race, because that's the other thing that we do want to avoid. We don't want to avoid we don't want to have, drivers kind of avoiding getting into the dirty air, or, not wanting to be in a battle with another car because it will, damage their tyres. We still want to, we don't want to make tyres kind of the be-all and end-all of it. And
yeah. At the end of the day, Formula One is a sprint race, not an endurance race. That I think gets lost on a lot of people because it's still an hour and a half long for the most part. People then think it's going to be a bit more of an endurance perspective, but it's a sprint race and that's it. It's not like you're supposed to be pushing to the edge. You're not supposed to be conserving as much. I mean, there's still a part of it. There's still all that. There's still common sense, but it's not Le Mans. You're not trying to get to the finish. You're trying to get to the finish in the best position. So,
well, would you say they're pushing it 100% now, Freddie?
No, I don't think they are.
No. But when was the last time they were pushing it 100%? What do you say?
2003.
It was going to go like 07, 08, I think. 09 as well, I'd say.
Maybe, actually.
The last Bridgestone year, I'd say.
Do you think?
I mean, you do get the odd races where drivers will, but in terms of kind of over the general season.
And it brings us back to our original discussion about the track at Turkey, where it's an interesting curveball when it's unpredictable and odd. But if it's all the time, it wouldn't be amazing. And that's what kind of we have with the tyres, I guess.
So we need to see a mix of races where the tyres go off really quickly and a mix of races where the drivers can push all the time.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah. Go on, Pirelli. Just
at the moment, we're like halfway between both for all the races, apart from Silverstone.
What we did see that was interesting in 2018, they pushed the boat out a bit with this, was they would bring the ultra softs and then skip a compound, not bring the super soft, bring the soft and medium. I like that as well. Because then you would have really it would negate the Q2 tyre rule a bit and would then force people into starting on a soft tyre. And then you could then see if you wanted to go on a much slower tyre to go long, or do a two-stop kind of situation, and it would be, I think, very interesting. I wouldn't be against bringing something like that back.
Yeah, I also think the tyres are soft, medium, and hard, whatever track. They need to be more different from each other, because I think at the moment the medium and the hard, for example, are too similar. Like you get 40 laps out of both of them. Kind of thing. I think
it should be like 10, 20, 30, say, or 10,
ideally,
15, 20.
Ideally,
1, 2, 3.
I think there needs to be a bigger difference, because then that will create more strategy options, I think.
Yeah, I think it is difficult because, as Freddie says, kind of F1 fans don't always know what they want.
Yeah.
But it's not just saying, "Oh, the tyres are rubbish." But it's unsatisfactory a lot of the time.
All we know is that we do want Portimao back.
No. We don't know that.
You don't know that then.
Exactly. The track that isn't Portimao is Abu Dhabi. It's different in quite a lot of ways. And the post-season tests at Abu Dhabi, the lineups have started to trickle through. So just thought we'd take a quick look at that to finish. So Williams announced the most uninspiring driver lineup.
What a lineup that is! I've just seen it.
Roy Nissany and Jack Aitken.
Woohoo!
I know, absolutely boss lineup. Alfa Romeo have announced Callum Ilott will be there, and it's thought Mick Schumacher won't. They've not confirmed, but it looks like he'll.
Not for Alfa.
Not for Alfa. I think he'll be at Haas. Ferrari have got Antonio Fuoco and Robert Schwartzman. Renault haven't got Alonso because they've limited
because he's not a young driver.
Yeah, you've got to have less than 2 Grand Prix starts under your belt to compete. And McLaren aren't taking part at all. They've decided it's not worth it for them, and they're not going to be there. So
that's all the news we have on that so far.
Yeah. Does anything jump out at either of you apart from just the depressingness of Roy Nissany and Jack Aitken? I mean,
Dan Tickton has been much better in F2, and he's on the Williams books.
Feels like they really want Roy Nissany, I guess, because he's got quite a bit of backing.
He's got a bit of dosh behind him.
He's not done awfully in his practice sessions, to be fair, but obviously, there's not much you can take away from that, really.
It says a lot about the F2 car, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's not done well in F2. But he's just nowhere near getting a super license at all. So it's...
The thing with Roy
we keep
Nissany,
sticking with him. I don't understand.
He's had a much better second season in F2 this year than he did in 2018.
Mm.
So, I don't know. There is a driver developing there, but it's just not at the rate of someone to get Formula One's attention.
Developing from so far back as well.
Yeah, he's developing from very far back. He's got a base that's much further away. But he did better than his dad when his dad did a practice session for Minardi and was like 15 seconds off the pace. Chanok Nissany in Hungary, 2006, I want to say. Which is just a complete farce because he just got there because he gave it all Minardi wanted around that time, 2005, actually, probably about £10 and you could just get in the car. But thing with, you're right, Roy Nissany's he's pure. He's like Alfonso Celis Jr. was for Force India, where he's just there because he's got a bit of backing, and we got to accept that with test sessions.
Just seems quite a strange one. Any other things jump out to you? We'll go through the permutations for F1 seats next week when we preview the F2 season showdown. Antonio Fuoco is an interesting one. He's a driver that I know next to nothing about.
He's been a simulator driver for Ferrari for a long time, and his F2 exploits were quite uninspiring. He was teammates to Charles Leclerc at Prema when Charles Leclerc waltzed to the title that year. And then I think he was teammates at Charouz with Louis Delatraz in 2018 and wasn't very inspiring then. He's just one of those guys who's on Ferrari's books as a simulator driver and is just a guy to roll out when they want to get some test days done, I think, in the way that you can't put Leclerc or Sainz in the car because they've got they've got more than 2 starts. So it's just a driver they've got in their back pocket, especially with Ilott being at Alfa Romeo and Schumacher presumably at Haas. They've got Schwartzman there, and I'd say Giuliano Alesi and Marcus Armstrong haven't done as much for the Formula One seat than Fuoco would have done behind the scenes. Yeah,
that's probably fair. He'll bring more information in terms of developing the car than you'd imagine Armstrong or Alesi would. Nigel, does anything kind of jump out at you from this?
No, not really. Not really too interested in that.
Took that by your
season test.
Took that by your board expression. But perhaps the best addition to, not to the grid because he's been around before, but to kind of frontline F1 in 2021 will be Alex Jakes, because he has been announced as replacing the departing Ben Edwards. He's not kicked him out. Ben Edwards was leaving anyway, at Channel 4. And everyone is happy about this. I've genuinely not seen any kind of negative comments, I don't think, about this. There's also the possibility that Matt Gallagher might kind of move into, F2, F3.
Actually, no, it's not a rumour.
It's mainstream. Yeah, more of a mainstream commentary position.
I hope he does. He's brilliant. Matt Gallagher is fantastic. He gets a lot of stick because he's WTF1, but he's a really good commentator. And his F2 and F3 and pit lane commentary on F1 this year for the pit lane channel on F1 TV have actually been very good. So it'd be interesting to see if we get like a Matt Gallagher, Alex Brundle partnership. I think that would be cool.
And kind of how excited are you both about Alex Jakes coming? I think it's a brilliant.
Yeah, I do too. I hope he does remain with the F2 and the F3 commentary. I do hope that, no offense to Mark Downs, I think he did a great job as well. But I just think Alex Jakes, you might know a bit more knowledgeable about those series. But yeah, I thought it's a great appointment for Channel 4. Ben Edwards has done a brilliant job over the last few years since coverage moved from the BBC to Channel 4. And yeah, all a good field news story for F1.
Yeah, completely. I'm with Nigel. It would be fun if he could still keep his role with F2 because he is a joy to watch when he's doing the Junior Series. He really does make some of the battles in that series. And whoever does replace him, be it as we put forward, Matt or anyone else, will have the biggest shoes to fill in motorsport commentary at the moment, I'd say.
Could be Will Buxton, because he used to do the GP2 commentary, didn't he?
That's true. He's quite good at it, actually.
Yeah, because Alex Jakes replaced Will Buxton in 2015, I want to say, 2015. Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of permutations, lots of things to look out for. And I'm looking forward to see how it settles down. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the partnerships kind of build for next season and hopefully at Melbourne. Yeah, there'll be a new era. And also just to shout out to Ben Edwards because he is also a brilliant commentator.
Yeah, he's a great commentator.
Really, I think
back to his days with John Watson on Eurosport in 10 and all of that, as well as BBC with Coulthard from 2012-ish.
British touring cars in late 2000s.
Porsche Mobil 1 Super Cup. The F1 season reviews.
Yeah, probably sober.
But yeah, I think that is the end of this podcast. As I say, we'll be back midweek next week for a Bahrain preview. Nigel's pointing at me.
You've forgotten.
No, I haven't.
Yes, you are.
I hope. Because I have been trying to work out this in my head. But Freddie, which team do you think would be best at finding a track? You know, what you said earlier, or my idea of kind of going there, you've got to find riddles.
The desert thing.
Work out where the track is. Yeah, which team do you think would be the best?
Guys are doing.
Which team do you think would be best at it?
Not for
I missed something here. Where's that question come out of?
It's coming. Don't worry.
This is surreal. Okay. Red Bull, because they do demo runs literally everywhere, so they know everywhere.
That's a good point. Nigel, what about you?
I don't know what kind of question is that?
Just answer it.
You get given riddles, you just drop to the middle of some random country and find the track.
It's our new qualifying format, the winging it qualifying format.
I don't know. Ferrari?
No, they're fighting each other. There's infighting all over the place. They go to about 6 tracks.
I'm so confused.
I think they'd be the worst team.
Ferrari rock about Kyalami when everyone's racing at Mugello.
I think personally they'd be the worst team. But would they be as good at our audience at finding where you can follow us on Twitter and on Acast?
You've forgotten, Adam.
What's he forgotten, Nigel? I don't know what he's forgotten.
You've forgotten. We planned it in the halfway thing.
I'm kind of just waiting for you to say now because
my fun fact about Turkey.
Oh, Nigel's got.
Yeah, I thought you were going to slide it in, to be honest.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I was waiting
what's your
for
fun facts, Nigel, to round off the podcast?
Oh, it better be good now.
Hold on.
Yeah, it better be.
Should we cut?
No, let's hear the fun fact. I'm leaving this in when I edit this.
Right, my fun fact is, Adam Dickinson has got his head up now. Did you know that top 3 drivers, the Turkish Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton, Sergio Perez and Sebastian Vettel, were the only 3 drivers that raced in the last Turkish Grand Prix before that in 2011?
No, I didn't. And it's a nice fact. I'm glad I know it.
Yeah. Thanks, Nigel.
He's happy. Right. And on that note, cheers for listening. We'll be back next week. Check us out. Bye.
Bye.